This is All the Right Marketing, a publishing podcast by Cardinal Rule Press. Now, here's your host, Maria Dismondy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to All the Right Marketing, where we talk with business owners and industry leaders about marketing their programs and products. For those of you who have been tuning in, our podcast has been around for about a year now, and you know that we talk to people in the book industry, authors, publishers, librarians, booksellers. And today we have a wonderful guest who I have to tell you, I'm really excited to talk to, Nancy Flood, who earned her PhD in experimental psychology in child development at the University of Minnesota and has authored a variety of award-winning books, including a handbook for counseling children and I Will Dance, which is based on the real story of Eva, a child born with cerebral palsy. Now, Nancy has lived on the Pacific island of Saipan, where she worked with teachers and parents to create resources and programs for students with disabilities. And for the past 20 years, she has taught on the Navajo Nation and co-founded an early literacy nonprofit called Read at Home, which encourages parents to read regularly with their children. I want to hear more about that. Her books have been recognized with a variety of national and international honors, but as Nancy always states, the best reward is when a child glances at me while reading one of my books and proudly says, "I am in this book." We need more of your books, Nancy's. Welcome today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. This is a delight.
I mean, that is exactly what Cardinal Rule Press, our company, is out to do, is to provide those mirrors and windows for children. And we've been doing that for the last decade now. And so we love speaking with creatives like yourself.
Well, it's so important because every child really does need to be able to see themselves in books, and many don't.
Exactly. And, when we talk to people, creative individuals, we talk to people like yourself who have ideas and write and create, but you have this other side of your brain that I was super interested in when I read it. You have not always been a professional writer, but you started off your professional career working with fish as a
brain surgeon. Yes, that's.
Can you please tell me more about this? I did not know that fish had brain surgeons.
They probably prefer not to, actually. But so what I was looking at the University of Minnesota, what the research I was doing was looking at the importance of the role of motivation and memory in terms of learning. I think both of those we kind of take for granted, especially motivation, that we think, oh yeah, everybody wants to learn, but no, that's not the case, especially in different types of mental illness. For example, depression, it takes away a lot of motivation. And the other part of learning is obviously we have to have memory, short-term and long-term memory. So the reason for fish, fish actually can learn some, pretty tricky tasks like getting through a maze to be able to get to food. That's most basic. And but what fish don't have is they don't have that cortex, that outer layer that is our very much thinking layer, information processing layer. But they do have the midbrain, and the midbrain is that amygdala and that hippocampus. Those words have become certainly more popular. So what I could do as a brain surgeon is ablate or damage a little part of the amygdala or the hippocampus to see how that affected motivation and memory, and see how that affected learning. I didn't have to worry then about the cortex because there was no cortex. That kind of experiment really can help us see what's going on in the brain in terms of what's important to learning. So again, you can see that right away. What about kids learning? What about kids who are neurodiverse or who have brain trauma or have different types of mental challenges or emotional challenges?
So how many years were you working in this field?
Oh, I was at the University of Minnesota almost 4 years, and then I was at London University for a year doing some postdoctoral research. And then I was doing writing about the area and talking about the area, and slowly was shifting from doing research to actually working as because I also was had my credentials as a counselor for children and families. So I found that that's where my heart was going, and then I really was so impressed with the importance of story. So what an amazing connection, because so as a reader of stories, but watching children work through challenges, mental challenge, emotional challenges, is that they would create stories and tell them over and over again as this process of trying to understand what's happened to them. And I want to say, like, one phrase is, one story is worth 1,000 statistics. That when our heart is touched, we remember the story. Just like if it's new information and it's meaningful to us, we have an emotional connection, we have an experiential connection, then we remember. When it has no meaning or no emotion, we study for the test, we take the test, and it's forgotten.
Wow, that's really powerful. And that's why I've always been, as a parent, so I'm taking myself out of this role of publisher and author, but as a parent, I've always been drawn to books that tell a story about a harder topic or a more challenging topic, so that my children can hear about it in third person and they can kind of see how the character experiences the emotions and the feelings, let's say around the death of a loved one or something. So then they can kind of see it through the eyes of someone else and have the conversation. We've got the battle of the sunshine right now.
Yes, I'm going to put down the shade, so excuse me.
I love it. She's in
Yeah.
Colorado. I'm in Michigan. We're not complaining, but I do really enjoy how your career really evolved from scientifically looking at the brain, and then it went into children and families, and then it evolved into taking what you learned from both of those areas and putting them into books. So let's go into talking about the books that you've written. And one of them is actually about fish, correct? Did you write a book about? No, hold on.
No. Water, that's close.
Okay, tell me about that book. Tell me about one of your first books and how that happened.
Well, one of my first, it's a nonfiction about water and the tremendous importance of water. And again, it's interesting what something different about it is that I told stories about water, a couple of stories. One is that there's statistics about how many women and children, especially girls, have to walk for water every day, but the walking for water is when you hear that one child is walking every day back and forth, and that's her whole life, walking for water for her family so they can stay alive, that there's no school, there's no rest, there's no playing soccer, there's none of that, right?
Because they need that essential water. And I'm looking, what is the title of that story that you're discussing right now?
Water runs through this book. Water runs
Okay.
through this book, yes. And then I tell the story at the very end that because for me, that trying to communicate in an emotional way as well as in facts and figures way to children about the importance of water is to again tell stories about it. That when we cry, our tears, that in our tears, it's a way of helping our body heal from emotion, from sadness, or from stress. That there's this high level of magnesium, and we're cleansing ourselves of a trauma.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Beautiful story about that the Navajo have, that the earth fell in love with the sky and the sky fell in love with the earth, and they were so happy that they rained down water.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. And you know so much about this area around being a child psychologist and counselor, you know about grief and about trauma. And I know you had a book called Walking Grandma Home that kind of discusses those feelings. Can you tell me a little bit about your inspiration for that story?
Oh, yes. So Walking Grandma Home, which is coming out in just a couple of months, and it, it, in a way, it's kind of, I want to say bookends, because when I was 7, my sister died, and my sister was only 5, and so that was my first experience, certainly of deep grieving. And I experienced the kinds of things of like, one is so difficult to talk with family because family doesn't want to talk about such a hard loss, especially my mom and dad, and realizing that for a time being, I had also lost them emotionally. But also there was a lot of guilt and shame. And typically, I mean, the normal response of all of us, but including children, is when something bad happens, that partly I'm to blame. Okay, so here's a 7-year-old at school. My sister was hit by a car while crossing the street, but I blamed myself. I blamed myself that I'd been mean to her the night before. I was so mad at her, and I wanted her to go away.
Mm. So
And
many emotions around that.
so many shame and guilt and sadness, but also maybe even anger. And children have a hard time understanding that response too to grieving. That, they say, "Why did mom die?" That was unfair of her to do that to do this to me. So all those feelings and what I found, continue to find about them, the wonderful thing about books, like you were just saying, it puts the subject a little bit distance so that we can hear a bit more. Like, let's say the A Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Patterson, and this somebody loses a good friend, and in that book too, there's blame and shame and anger, all of those things. Um, One of my favorite books is Charlotte's Web, dealing with this. Charlotte has to die, and Wilbur's mad about that, right? Um,
Exactly.
so it begins that conversation, and that's where I think the power of story is that we're talking about another human being or another situation, but similar to mine. So I'm not the only one. Oh, I thought I was the only one that ever felt that way. And that's particularly too with any kind of mental illness. But also, we can talk about that person. We can talk about Charlotte and how she felt, and I don't have to risk and you know talking about my own feelings, my own heart, because that's too vulnerable.
Absolutely. And so you spoke both about grief, feelings, the mental aspect, but then the physical aspect too in your story that came out in 2020, I Will Dance. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration. This is the story with a young child with cerebral palsy, correct?
So the inspiration was watching a dance company in Minneapolis. I will Young Dance. Um, my family was partly involved with that, which is how I got introduced to it. But dance has been part of our family. So and it's an all abilities, all ages, which I had never seen before. I've certainly seen dance where maybe there's wheelchair dance, but uh, it's not all abilities. And in this dance company, it is all abilities and all ages. And when I watched them practice and watch them perform, I thought, oh, I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to feel sad for these the young people or the older people that are need a wheelchair in order to be mobile. But instead, it was beautiful and it was joyful, and to see the joy on the faces, of the dancers, I was so moved, and so I asked if they would like to have a story written about them because everybody needs to know this. And what I learned from them, like you always end up learning more than you give, right? What I learned from them that to me is so powerful is one is not only does everybody have, of course, have dreams and wishes and goals, and we don't want it to be limited. We don't want anybody to limit us. So even here is this young girl who can not even fully move her face, but in only her lower arms. But how is she going to dance? But no, here she's determined to do that. And what she's also looking for is not only being able to fulfill what her passion is, but a community in which to do it. So it's not being like, okay, separate. Okay, now we will see those with disabilities dance. No, it's part of this very community of dance, of the dance world, the dance community, to be part of that community. So, and the third thing I learned was my disability does not define me. I am first me, right? It's Ava. And then, yes, it's Ava with cerebral palsy, but I'm not cerebral palsy. I'm Ava.
Oh, wow. You hit the nail on the head with that one. I am not cerebral palsy. I am Ava. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So what next? What are you up to now? You are a busy woman. You've had a very busy career. Tell me what you're working on now.
Well, I'm working on a couple of things, of course. On the fun side, I'm working on, of all things, a bird book, but it's a bird book that celebrates spring, celebrates song, celebrates the taking care of our environment, and just every new day there's the coming of dawn. I'm writing a book about tropical trees. How's that?
How is that? And now I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to have this question answered. Do you work with an agent, or are you submitting these to different publishing houses that you already have worked with?
Mostly agent. I didn't actually have an agent though till, I don't know, now it's probably been close to 10 years, yes. But the publishing world has gotten so complicated, and so many doors have been closed to open submissions, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I do poetry, and so my agent doesn't agent poetry, so I'll do that on my own. I've been working on a Vietnam, not his historical novel, and also he doesn't want to handle that particular work. So it's a combination, but mostly through agents, yes.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a lovely experience talking to you and hearing about the evolution of your career and how it went from one end of brain surgeon for fish all the way to helping children and families to love who they are and to know who they are, and not to be defined by the exterior, but really the interior. Thank you so much for having the time to speak with us, Nancy. We appreciate you. And for those of you listening, please know that each Tuesday we come out with a new interview speaking with someone in the book industry about how they get their messages into the world. Thank you, everyone. If this episode resonated with you, let's take it a step further. Head over to cardinalrulepress.com and check out our blog. It is filled with resources for anyone who loves books. Whether you are a publisher, a librarian, a bookseller, or an author, we help you to figure out ways to get visibility around those books. Thanks for listening to All the Right Marketing with Maria Dismondy. If there is a topic you would like us to explore and cover, please email podcast@cardinalrulepress.com. Head over to our website, cardinalrulepress.com, to sign up for our monthly newsletter where you can learn more tips on getting books visible into the market. Last but not least, follow us on Instagram for a daily dose of all things books. If you enjoyed this episode, rate and review or share with a friend or colleague. Thanks so much.